Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about talking with professionals on how to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And holy moly, are we talking to somebody who's been successful today? And he's just a youngster. and I love talking with our, shall we say, younger generation of entrepreneurs, because I'm on the older side, but it more than anything, it just really shows that things are going to be so cool when this younger generation is truly taking control and being in business. And it is so much fun. And so please join me in welcoming Joel Green to our program today. Welcome, Joel. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Deb. Thanks so much for having me on.
Perfect. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this. So Joel Green is the CEO of Pro Level Training, the national director of Nike Sports Camps. You heard that right, folks. Nike Sports Camps. He is a former professional basketball player and a renowned motivational speaker. Unfortunate circumstances as a youth helped to groom and refine Joel into adulthood, giving him a unique differentiator in business and as an individual to see life objectively from multiple vantage points. His messages deliver tangible advice for others to attain their desired outcome, and many of these messages are conveyed in his first book, Filtering: The Way to Extract Strength from the Struggle, which just released on September 6th. So again, Joel, welcome.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Great. Well, I always ask my guests, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today. And you have had quite the journey, and I think it's one of those stories that people, we always need to hear, because we tend to think that, especially with professional athletes, it was all given to them. They were just these perfect people, and all of these things. And you had to truly earn every success that you have, and part of that is because you learn from your failures, which of course we're going to talk more about. But tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Well, I mean, you mentioned the journey. I mean, it's been a heck of a journey, an imperfect journey, to be honest. Perfect for me though, but imperfect by way of what people desire, by way of even what I desired. I look back on it now and thank God for every bit and piece and particle of the journey. I mean, it made me into a beast in so many capacities, humbly speaking. I mean it too, but it helped me to level up mentally, spiritually, emotionally, so I can now handle things that, had I not gone through those things, I may not be able to handle different anxieties, or the attack or the potential of anxiety coming, and stress. I now have the foresight to see them coming because of what I went through in the past and have had to withstand. So my upbringing brought me to where I am, growing up in an abandoned home and just having to deal with that side of life, literally wearing donated clothes from week to week, and being excited to get a new pair of clothes that I knew was new and not handed down to me from my brothers or from the church. So just experiencing things like that, I knew what humility was from day one, from birth. I was humbled, I was born into a humbled condition and environment, and just, being in Philadelphia, North Philly, being around violence, and just, literally I was about 10 feet away from a shooting when I was 6. In 1991, I'll never forget the day. It was horrifying. And just going through things like that made me just appreciate life. And when I say life, I'm talking about being alive. So I really do my best just to live things up, I don't have a YOLO, you only live once mentality, but there's something about me that touches on that every once in a while, to where I just make sure I appreciate life and those lives around me, my family, my friends, my business partners, and just really do the best to maximize on every single thing that's in front of me, whether it was basketball, now speaking, working with youth, when it comes to our Nike camps and events. I just do the best to maximize on this thing called life.
Right. And in your book, which again is called Filtering: The Way to Extract Strength from the Struggle, you talk about your early life in pretty much a lot of detail, and it really was just horrifying. But the fact, and you could have gone one of two ways. You could, there were two very clear paths for you. And I'm guessing that, as you were saying, your family was very much, why you went down the path of being that professor, at that point it would have been a student athlete, and really saying, no, we're not going to go down there. We're not going to be part of the gangs, and you had tragedy and losing your brother. And all of these things. And you still said, it's not the way I'm going to go.
Yeah, I kept my vision in sight. I kept it in mind. I knew where I wanted to go. With losing my brother, that was the biggest, disappointment ever that I've ever seen or experienced.
Well, and he was your big brother.
Right. I relied on him, you know what I mean? So that was a major part of the disappointment. It was like, man, I have two big brothers, one, big sister. I'm the youngest of four. So I really rely on my older siblings, growing up. I really was like, okay, I don't know something, let me ask them.
Right.
And, so once I lost my older brother, it was just like, man, who do I talk to about this topic? Me and him, we talk basketball all the time. He started me off in basketball. So he had that level of influence on me. He was the one that challenged me so many times in regards to basketball. And I'm like, man, who's gonna be my challenge now? So it was a shocker. I shut down for some time and just had to assess life and just, find new appreciation for it, because I didn't appreciate it during that time. I just, I'll be honest, and I don't say this often at all, but I didn't want life at that point. It was like, man, this thing is actually, people can come and go anytime, and about it.
Right.
But it's not until it hits home. Literally, it's like, man, this thing is, death is real.
Right.
And it saddened me to that point where it's like, I don't really care.
Why
about
bother?
living. Why bother? Honestly, and again, I was 17 years old when it happened. He was only 25. It was like, I hope I make it, and, so it was that type of mentality that I had for a short stint. But then I said, I got to turn this around. Family helped me get out of that funk that I was in. And they said, you're still here. You do have to keep living.
Right.
And
you'll get struck by lightning by him if you don't, right?
right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. And it's, so that just getting out of that funk helped me so much. And then converting that struggle point that I had, converting that anger that I had into strength, and to find energy from that anger and apply it on the court, apply it in the classroom. And I just became an amazing student and an amazing athlete, literally weeks and months after he passed away.
Right. And I think that's obviously a lot of what you talk about. And it's what you discuss a lot in your book, is how we take those negatives, those setbacks, those failures, and learn from them and go forward. So talk to us more about that.
Yeah, that's what it's all about for me. I feel like nothing happens for nothing, right? I feel like everything has a purpose. Everything has a reason. But when it's difficult, when a happening or a situation is difficult, we tend to just ignore it as fast as we can.
Right.
Just try to get rid of it. It's painful. It hurts. But what we lose out on is the fact that we need to get something from that, so that that situation doesn't continue to reoccur. And that's what it's about for me now, to where if it's difficult, I lean into it. I don't lean away from it. I don't run away from it, because I want to know why this came. I want to know why it happened. I want to resolve it and not revolve it. That's the whole thing with me.
Right.
So, that's what it's truly about, like leaning into what you're going through and questioning it without emotion, though.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
yeah, because the emotion is what really drags you down.
Right. and I've been dragged, I've drugged myself down, and that's why I know now, because instead of me saying, okay, why is this going on? I'll be saying, why is this going on? That is
Right.
the same question, but that emotion clouds the judgment and the assessment of what's taking place and what's going on. So I've had to just remove emotion from many different things so I can actually carry a good perspective and different and see things from multiple vantage points. And for me, filtering, which again is the name of my book, that's the method I came up with for myself, just to literally break things down into particles, bite-sized pieces for myself, so I can easily understand it and view it and ingest it, and just extract as much out of that situation or that difficulty as I can, and say, okay, maybe this is why I came. Let me run with that now. Let me leave the rest behind, because that's the stuff that will actually have me harp on situations that I don't need to. But this is right now, this right here, this part of it, this actually helped me progress beyond it.
Right. And in your book, you talk about comfort zones and how we love getting into those and not getting out. And it's interesting. I didn't have a chance to tell you when we were chatting when we started. I was diagnosed with cancer several years ago, and had some setbacks, to say the least. And spent a lot of time in the hospital. And there was a point where, it was easier to just lay there. They'd come in and they would say, we need to do physical therapy. And I'm like, go away. And I come up with an excuse for them to and because it really was easier. And I was thinking, and I'd always think, tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow. Or I'd tell them, come back a little bit later. And and we do that in life, in business, all of those. We hit those hard spots.
Yeah.
And we think, tomorrow. And so you're all about, nah.
No,
we do it today.
Today. That's what it's all about for me. I mean, that's it. The way I look at so many things and is most of what we reject by default, as far as things that, we're thinking about doing, those are usually the very same things that we ought to be doing.
Right.
The things that we try to deny, if we do them, those are the things that will make us more disciplined people and individuals. And that's what discipline is for me, is doing the things that I don't feel like doing, simply put. And, I don't feel like doing it today. Tomorrow, nope, I better do it today then, because it's something beneficial about doing it today, with the fact that I don't feel like doing it today. And that's where it's even in the book to where I talk about going beyond your feelings. And that's an important thing for me, to where I have to ignore my feelings so often, Deb. I mean it. Because my feelings try to hold me back a lot of times. My feelings, if I lived in my feelings and I just went along with my feelings, I wouldn't achieve even a quarter of what I currently achieve or what or had achieved in the past. So I ignore my feelings so often to make sure I'm ensuring progress is taking place.
Right.
My feelings are so inhibiting so many times, to where I just say, nah, get out of here. Let me just do the inverse of it.
Well, and I tell people it's okay to acknowledge those, and it's okay, even to have a little pity party now and then. But then you say, okay, now we're going to go on.
It's not for too long. Right. Exactly.
Right. It was interesting, as we are recording this, it's the day after when Queen Elizabeth died. And, and so last night I'm reading your book and watching kind of, now granted she was, elderly. And so I'm sure they had a lot of this stuff already prepared by television, but I was watching the story of her life, and one of the things they talked about was, the last couple years, holy schmoly, that royal family has, if it can go wrong, it did. Right. And they mentioned the fact that she told them, and you can just see this, this little old lady with, this little British accent saying, well, we must soldier on. And I thought, that really is the truth. I mean, I remember like when they showed, the service for her husband, there was one tear that, now granted, British are stiff upper lips and, and all of those, but she allowed that. And then she went on, and I think that is so much. And it just struck me that it was all this, happening at the same time. We have to acknowledge those bad things.
Absolutely.
But then we go on.
Right. It's acknowledgement that's key. Again, you don't want to ignore or act like something doesn't
Right.
exist. You have to
Because then you'll probably
acknowledge
do
it.
it again.
Right, exactly. And that shows you're not really accepting the reality of things. And that's so important to do. Just you have to at least accept what transpired, what took place. But again, just like you said, you can't stay there. You know, there's nothing wrong with shedding tears. There's nothing wrong with feeling it.
Right.
But you just can't let those things overtake you to where they keep you exactly in that moment.
Right.
That's a tough thing to get out of if you allow that to happen.
Right. You know, and that happens a lot in business where, you know, we send a proposal to somebody and we get turned down. Or, you know, we think we've got a great new business relationship and all of a sudden they're ghosting us. And,
Right,
you know, or we
right.
lose the big clients, you know, or even the small clients, you know, all of these things. And, you know, and the temptation quite often is to say, nope, I'm done. I'm just
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
You know, and of course, you know, what we should be doing is going, why did that happen? And how can I make sure it doesn't happen again?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, that's really what it's about. Again, the assessment of what takes place. You know,
Right.
I feel like it has to be about making adjustments, not stopping. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, this route was closed right here. This street was blocked off. Okay, I'm going to turn around, but this turnaround is to find another way. You know, it's just a detour to me. It's not a dead end.
Right.
And that's what it's all about. So it's just really saying, okay, that didn't work out. Okay, what's next?
Right. Right. You know, and one of the things that I love when I talk with athletes is, you know, you learned at a very young age that you have to have routines, you have to have schedules, and you have to push through. You know, how many times were you told, okay, one more wind sprint, and you're like, I'm gonna die. I'm just gonna die. You know, and you know, or you know, run the bleachers, and you're like, no, or you know, weightlifting. Okay, let's do 5 more pounds, or you know, 20 more reps, or whatever. And yes, now you do have to know your physical limitations, you know, because clearly you don't want to hurt yourself. But at the same point, you learn very early on, you have to keep pushing forward. You know, and you know, and we see that with the elite athletes. I mean, you know, when you hear about, you know, Michael Jordan doing 1,000 free throws, you know, or, you know, any of the athletes where they're talking about, yeah, they just did this for hour after hour, or even musicians. I mean, I was talking to a musician the other day who said, you know, she practiced for 4 hours a day. And I'm like, when did you have a life? And of course, that was her life.
Right.
You know, and she knew if she wanted to be that elite musician, she had to keep practicing. You know, and even to the point of, you know, her fingers would bleed and things like that. And she just kept going. And it really is easy.
I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
the way I feel is you have to have, if you're going to be elite, you have to have an obsessive curiosity about your limitation, right? Like your limit, your threshold, you know, your failure, your point of failure. And that's where you mentioned the Michael Jordan, you mentioned the musician. They're very, very curious about what their cap is.
Right.
You know, and it's that curiosity that always leads to more and more improvement, to greatness.
Right.
And, you know, I remember when I began tapping into, you know, a high level of curiosity, I had a conversation with Kobe Bryant before, and he really piqued my curiosity, you know, like as far as he made me think. We repeated the same things 4 or 5 times to me in one conversation. And I'm like, why does he keep saying this stuff?
Right.
And it wasn't until years later to where I really began to understand, like, okay, wow, number one, I see him living out all the stuff he was telling me to do.
Right.
And as I began trying some of the stuff out, I'm like, whoa, I'm excelling, you know. And it just made me curious as to how much more I can do. You know what I mean? And then, okay, I got there. Let me see if I can tap into. Let me be willing. He told me, be willing to see. You have to be willing to see black, is what he told me. And just meaning you have to be willing to go all out and pass out if you have
right.
to.
Yeah, you're at that point where your world has gone whoop up.
Right. Like, because you gave your absolute all.
Right.
And that meant so much to me because, I mean, I have that mentality now in business.
Right.
You know, as I carried it in sport, I'm like, now I don't have to worry about passing out per se, you know, doing a physical feat, because now I'm able to sit down more often. But to have that mentality of, hey, when you have this task in front of you, execute it with full intent to succeed, not worried about failing in any way. If that happens, it's a part of the process. Keep moving, make adjustments. But just being willing to go all out with any and every process.
Right.
No retreat mindset. It is hard not to succeed.
Well, and it's also, one of the things is that you're not always going to like it, and I always kind of laugh when people say, oh, it's not work if you love what you're doing.
Right.
And yes, there are certain points that you love. And if there aren't, then you shouldn't be doing it, really, but there are also things you don't like doing. You don't like shooting 1,000 free throws or hitting a tennis ball for, 4 hours against a wall. I don't like doing invoicing and all sorts of stuff. And, it has to be done. Now, the nice thing is there are things in business that we can delegate, right?
Right.
Or automate or do things like that. And so, but, it's not all hearts and flowers. And I think that's sometimes where people, they don't push through, as you've said, they get to that point, like, no, I don't like doing this, so I'm not going to do it.
Right. I mean, that's what I tell people all the time, depending if I'm talking to athletes or anyone, I tell them the fun ain't always first.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's what you have to be willing to endure in order to enjoy. And that's, how I dare say most processes are. There's a point to where you have to endure in order to get to the other side. And once you get to the other side, it's like, man, I love this. I enjoy it. But not most, but many people aren't willing to endure because it doesn't start off fun.
Right.
It's like, no, you can actually, I promise you the fun is ahead of you, but you have to get through that breaking point first and say, oh man, okay, I understand it now.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned I don't like to invoice. Okay. But I can't do anything if I don't invoice, right? I gotta have,
Exactly.
and but that reminds me one time when and this was when I lived in Colorado, I had somebody approach me and they said, hey, we would like you to speak to our organization. And I do that. So that was okay. And so, we were working out the details. And then I said, and my fee is. And I got crickets. And they said,
I've seen it before.
Fee? And I said, well, yes, I charge, and I said, now, let's have this discussion. And they said, we assumed that you didn't charge because you love it. And I said, oh, I do love it, but my mortgage people don't.
Right, exactly.
And I think that's the thing, I really, and so sometimes that, we do get caught up in that, oh my gosh, I love it so much.
Right.
Or I hate it, but it's all part of that process.
Yep. Exactly. I mean, that's what it's about. Again, I believe me, I've heard crickets before too, in the same exact situation.
Oh yeah.
But it's your time is valuable. And that's one thing I had to realize is like, I enjoy what I do. I absolutely love what I do. With the many things that I do, I love each and every one, just like you said, or I wouldn't be doing it. I wouldn't be spending so much of my time doing those things, but you then realize that love has a value to it. Love is valuable, just like time is valuable. And it's like, okay, I spend, I have to receive as I give out my love, and things have to be reciprocated. And that's usually reciprocated in business by way of, financial, exchanges and things like that. So that's what I had to accept as well.
It's interesting. Just earlier this week, I saw somebody and they were talking about the fact that we have two hands. One is to give and the other is to receive. And I really like that idea because,
like that,
sure, we can do things where, like you might choose to speak to a certain youth group for free. But if it's a business group, especially, and I tell people, especially if you have sold tickets based on my name,
money is being generated, exactly,
right. Then I'm, and there are other ways to work around things. That group that I was talking to that said, hey, they didn't want to pay. I said, okay, how, it was a business association. I said, a membership, and oh no. They wouldn't give me a free membership. And I ended up turning them down. It was like, no,
Wow.
this is, this is all benefit you, no benefit me.
Right. Exactly.
And I think that's something that is something that as business people we need to learn is we can't always just give away, and new business people especially, they're like, okay, I have to discount my rates. I need to, I need to do things for free. I recently commissioned a young lady just out of college to do some artwork for me, and working on a new company. And so I need a new logo, and and she's very talented. I looked at her portfolio and all this. And so she and I were having a Zoom and, to discuss the details. And she said, now I'm going to send you this quote, but if it's too much. And I said, okay, you never say that again.
Yeah.
I said, I came to you for your expertise. And I said, you set that value at what that value is worth. Yeah. Not, and I said, but then you can negotiate. So like, she said, you can say things like, okay, well, I will give 5 concepts and it's $1,000. And if I came back and said, well, my budget was 500, then she'd say, okay, then you get 2 concepts. I said, so you're not, and I said, but don't get pushed too far. I said, because again, I came to her for her expertise. And I got very good work. I was very pleased with what she did. But she said nobody in college taught her that. They taught her how to do a really good proposal, but then nothing else.
That's not right. Exactly. That side of business is really taught.
Right.
And I just had, oh man, almost an identical conversation. This was via text message. Maybe 3 days ago. A friend of mine, she's amazing at what she does. And she sent me a text. It was a screenshot of a message from somebody else, pretty much, without anything malicious intent, but devaluing her service. They wanted her to do something for them. And they said, I'm not sure if you want to get paid, but this is, what we can do for you. And she said, what do you think? Should I do it? Or I said, no. I said, number one, I know what you normally would do. And it would have been a nice opportunity though. It would have been a nice opportunity, good exposure. I said, but here's the thing. I said, you're at a point now to where you can just say, no, this is actually what I do. Go back at them with what you charge and what you desire. I said, you're asking me because you can tell you shouldn't do it. I said, you wouldn't have texted me.
Yep. So, she was just wanting that little backup of you.
Right. So I let her know. I said, look, honestly, this is what you do. I said, but I wouldn't do it. I said, I would let them know exactly what you want and let them know that travel is also included in your rate.
Yep.
And I just, broke some things down to her. And I said, look, just, have comfort in whatever you charge.
Right.
I said, because right now you're not comfortable with what they're presenting to you.
Right. So then she's not going to do her best work. That's what it comes down to. And then nobody's going to be happy.
Right. She, you got to be fulfilled from, from what you're receiving. If you're not fulfilled by it, it's, whether you acknowledge it or not, it's going to be something in the back of your mind that I'm not going to
work quite as hard on this.
Yeah. And you don't want that, in you at all when it comes to the workings of your service.
Right. Well, and sometimes it's just some terminology. I remember when I was first starting to speak, my LinkedIn profile said public speaker. And I met with someone who said I needed to change that. And I was like, to what? Professional speaker. And she said, just that switch makes people know, oh, she charges. And it really was,
that's amazing.
It was like, wow. That's amazing. But yeah, you can be a public speaker or you can be a professional speaker. Are you a basketball player or a professional basketball player?
Makes sense. I love that. You're going to have me go through everything that I have.
I know. You need to, except your stuff looks pretty good.
That's funny.
But yeah, it is on how you look at things. And one of the chapters that I liked in your book that was very interesting to me was, again, your perception on things. And you were talking about triggers. And, that's been a thing, really a lot of people, that's one of the key phrases that people are using a lot of is, oh, this triggers me, this triggers me. But talk to us about how triggers can be positive.
I mean, see, when we hear triggers, we always think of the things that tease us off, that sends us off the deep end and things like that. I personally never hear anybody talk about positive triggers, things that takes them to a beautiful place, things that puts them in a place of relaxation. You know, when we focus on the positive triggers, the same way we're well aware of our negative triggers, like, okay, when someone says this to me, oh, I snap every time.
Right.
What makes you feel good every time? You know what I mean? And put yourself around those people. Put yourself in a situation to where you know that song puts you in a great place. Why don't you start to listen to that song a little bit more often?
Right.
Why don't you go to that park that makes you feel good? That could be a positive trigger for you, because it puts you in a place of, again, of positivity, of peace, you know, serenity. Like, these are the things that we ought to begin seeking out more often amidst the whole turmoil of life and adulting and all these things that we forget about. And that's why I wanted to write on it, because we get so caught up in life with living the structured life that our job has us living, because everything ends up being based around the 9 to 5 hours and, you know, all this, even parenting. Again, I'm a parent, so I get it. But we forget ourselves in the mix, and we don't think about these positive triggers, that song, that show, whatever it is, and really focus on it. I think if we focus on these positive triggers, the same way we focus on the negative triggers, I think that we can put ourselves in an amazing place each day.
Right. You know, and you mentioned in your book and in your bio and things, you have a young son. I can imagine that hearing him giggle is probably one of the best things you could hear. You know, and so, yeah, even if I don't know, record it. So that way, if you're grumpy, cranky, having a bad day, you listen to a minute of him giggling.
Absolutely.
And who could be grumpy, cranky after that?
Right. I mean, it's so true. I mean, and that's intention. That's intent. That's an intentional move. And that's where I think so many of us may fail. As far as our intention to make ourselves pleased, happy, serene, at peace. And it's like, because there's so many unintentional things that already fights against that, the triggers that randomly happens. We have to have some protocol, some intentional things in place. Again, that's exactly why I wrote the book, so I can have a tool, a method, filtering, something I know that I can refer to once this or that happens. It don't have to be this or that, anything specific, but when life happens that's not ideal, I can apply this. Or even when life happens that is ideal, I can apply the same method. So I filter good situations too.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what it's about for me. I filter everything. And it's not to where I micromanage life. Not at all. But if I feel like it's a situation that I would like to have replicated, I'll lean into that situation and say, okay, how did I do that? What did I do? That made me feel good. How can I replicate that feeling? And I leave behind what I don't need. I take from it what I can have, help me replicate that situation again. And so I can feel that feeling all over again.
Right. In your book, you talk about the pandemic, and, obviously there was bad stuff that happened. But it's been so interesting to see companies and individuals who went, ooh, this is an opportunity. And so talk to us a little bit more about that. How, something that horrible can be turned into opportunities.
What was pretty crazy. I mean, I don't, it's just the way I am, but I'll be honest, I saw opportunity immediately, and it's probably because I'm usually so busy, as we all are.
Right.
It sat me down.
It forced us to, right? And you probably had your son at home and all sorts of stuff.
Exactly. I think I was looking for an excuse or looking for a reason to have to sit still and keep myself home. I didn't realize it, but once it happened, I was like, I needed this. I needed time to just think,
right?
To just not have to be here, not have to be there. And, it worked out for me, because I said, okay, I came up with so many ideas. My creativity just started going through the roof. I'm on a phone call and people are like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Because I didn't have time to think before. I was on the go every day. And so I saw so much opportunity in creation during the pandemic. And obviously this is around just trying to be safe, you know, making sure my son is healthy and safe, and make sure myself is healthy and safe, and the dog, you know, everything.
Right.
And just making sure products are clean when they get delivered to the house, and wiping everything down for 20 minutes. It was a big to do, but around that time, the time was the most viable piece of the pandemic.
Right.
That I think we received. We got to have time to ourselves that we weren't used to having. A lot of us didn't know what to do with it.
Oh, I went stir crazy.
Right. Look,
and I've worked from home for 20 years, but you tell me I have to, and I'm like,
right.
No.
Exactly. That was and that's the thing. I was working from home too, but it was just it was a different level of time that you had to be home. It was just different. It was like, oh my goodness, cabin fever. You know, I had my moments. I had to be creative and start to fill those moments of time. But I saw so much opportunity in just being able to create and saying, okay, we're not going to be in this pandemic forever. I knew that. I said, okay, by the time we get out of this thing, I'm going to spend some time for the next, you know, I don't know how long this thing's going to last. You know, I was hearing about it in Italy and China, and all of a sudden it came over here. This is scary. I don't know if it's airborne, so I'm going to make sure I stay in my house and just create something for when this thing passes us. Some amazing things going to happen. And thank God I stuck with it. And I'm now living in some things that I set up during the pandemic.
Right. Well, and I think it gave so many companies the realization that they could and had to expand with what they were doing. You know, all of a sudden, you know, obviously we were not meeting people in person. So we went to online networking. You know, we mentioned the Nike Sports Camp in your bio. You know, could not have those kids in person. You know, and so you started doing virtual training. And the cool thing about that is now that can be worldwide. You know, clearly in person is better, you know, because you can look at somebody, you know, this is how they're standing, this is how they're shooting, you know, all of those things. But yeah, to be able to expand your message worldwide, I think was what so many companies went, ooh, you know, this.
I mean, really. Right. I mean, you didn't realize how connected the world truly was until the pandemic happened.
Right.
I mean, we already knew because we've been on the web for, you know, 20 years already. But we really saw, okay, we're 1 degree away from everyone that we need to be in touch with. Right. You know, or 1.5 degrees away. And that was the beauty of the pandemic. Obviously, there's a whole lot that was not beautiful at all, you know, just with lives lost and people being sick, things like that. But it connected us. Right. As much as it disconnected us. You know what I mean? It disconnected us in person, but we actually became even more connected because we felt lonely. We started reaching out people even more like, hey, what are you doing? You had nothing to talk about. It just, what are you doing? And started having watch parties online together to watch a show. Like how often have you? So it was just so many things that I found that was of benefit to the pandemic. You just have to kind of switch your perspective to see it.
Right. Yeah, because the companies that went, I am not changing. I'm, for the most part, are not here. You know, they didn't survive, and it's sad because a lot of those were really good companies, but you know, or places like say restaurants who said, okay, we are not going to do delivery. We're not going to do this. You know, and you know, they just didn't survive because. Unfortunately, it lasted obviously a lot longer than, you know, I still remember when they said 2 weeks, we all went, oh yeah, no.
Right. I remember.
I mean, I remember. Well, and especially because you have friends in Europe who had been dealing with it longer than you know. But, you know, and it's funny because I still have people today say, oh, we can't wait for things to get back to normal. That's not going to happen. And I say that as a cancer patient. I'm like, no, there's no such thing as normal. You go, okay, here's what we've got now. And what are we going to do in the future?
That, I mean, that's what it was about. I remember this may have been the week shutdown happened. It was like the 3rd week of March, roughly, maybe around the 22nd, something like that. And I called my intern right away and said, hey, we got to get on the court real quick. For whatever reason, we just got to get on the court and just bring, I'm gonna bring my camera. I need you for about 4 hours. Let's get out on the court. and just film me doing all these drills, man.
Right.
We just got to do something that, in case we're all locked in, because they were talking about shutdowns already in
Right.
other
And you're
countries.
in New York, which ended up shutting down very hard.
Even fact, I'm just outside. I'm south of New York, so
Okay.
I'm in New Jersey. But I mean,
Okay.
we followed the same protocol,
Right.
same exact protocol. So it was like, oh man, we heard all the talks potentially coming, and I'm like, okay, I have no clue what this thing is. I don't know if this is like the Outbreak movie or what, but we got to hurry up and make an adjustment business wise so that we can convert. So that we got on the phone with him, invited him over to the house. I said, let's sit down. We sat down for a few hours, came up with some ideas. Said, all right, let's hit the court. I recorded all these drills for virtual training, and it worked out to where Nike was looking to do the same thing, and they called me to do the first virtual Nike basketball camp. I jumped on it. We began training kids in Turkey, Istanbul, and it was amazing. It was amazing. It was just the fact that we had to convert, so fast under pressure. I welcomed it. That's the pressure that I welcomed. I'm like, that made me even more creative.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of weird to think if they'd said, okay, in a month, this is going to happen, we would have all gone, right. And the last couple of days we would have panicked again.
Hustled, right.
But yeah, when it was, you were in your office on Friday and you were not in your office on Monday. It was like, wow, this is entertaining.
Right. That was shocking. And it's like, man, what do we do? I'm looking at the school system. I'm like, okay, so are you telling me I'm a teacher now? In addition to already being a business owner, like I'm trying to run my business already. Now I'm a second grade teacher at the time. And it was a heck of an adjustment, but it just, you had to see it from a different angle to be able to thrive,
Yeah, I mean, it really has been incredible to watch the business and the businesses that are brand new. I've talked to several people on the podcast where they started their new business during the pandemic, because they had time to do it. They thought, I do not want to be back in an office again for whatever reason, all of these. And so it's been fun to watch that.
I completely agree. And I've said the same before too. It's like, it's amazing how many people, how many businesses popped up out of the blue, seemingly out of the blue. Obviously, they may have been working on things for years, but that's a lot of people got a glimpse of work from home. People have been saying for years, I would love to work from home.
But they got in their car and they dutifully commuted.
Right. I would love that. Then they realized, okay, maybe I can't be my own manager. I want to get back in the office. But you had the other ones who are disciplined enough to work from home say, you know what? No, I like this. Like you just said, I don't want to go back into the office. Let me create my own situation, business, and work my way out. And I know personally so many people that has done it, and they're still successfully running a business. I just commend them.
Right. And I wanted to talk to you also about, the people who had a career, so you were a basketball player, you were an athlete, and all of a sudden, they can't do that any longer for whatever reason. They choose to, or, maybe it's a pandemic and, all of those various things. But, and I've been talking with a young man and who was a college football player. He's now, how he graduated. Now what the heck does he do? Right. And, so when people have to just completely switch, a lot of times it happens, say, for military people. Right. What do you talk with them about?
Again, it's all about that pivoting mindset to where you have to be on your toes the same way you were as an athlete. Just being honest with you, you have to have that same mentality. I know what I went through was difficult. I'll be honest, Dave. I went through depression, anxiety, stress, everything. I just didn't.
Your identity was you were a basketball player. Right. So now what?
Right. Who am I? You start to question yourself. You become insecure about life in a way you've never been insecure. You've been the secure athlete. You're making money. You're getting love from random people. And all of a sudden, you're not doing that anymore. It's not crowds cheering for you. Like, whoa, wait a second. I know that I'm more than an athlete, but in what way? In what capacity? What can I do? Because I've been doing this for 20 plus years of my life.
Right.
And so you have to just really tap into those other sides that you possess, those other skills that you possess, those other interests that you have. And that's one thing I've had to coach former athletes on this, just letting them know, hey, look, what are you interested in? We have full conversations. Hey, I would just be super curious about their life. Hey, what do you like doing? What do you watch on TV? What kind of programs do you watch? What kind of things do you look up? What do you Google from day to day? Those type of things to where you tap into your interests. Your interests can lead to that purpose that you have deep inside of you. And that's one thing, I would even tell him, like, hey, just what are you interested in?
Right.
Start making a path toward it now. Start carving a way toward that right now. Make a crevice in some form or fashion that can lead you toward that interest that you have. And just research that interest like no other.
Right.
That I feel like the disconnect for so many business owners, people wanting to get into business or a certain way of life, is just a lack of knowledge, lack of information.
Right.
We're ignorant on a lot of things.
Right.
But
and it's scary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The moment we begin to learn things, we have comfort toward it though. And I feel like it can help level us up. The more we learn, I don't know what Jim Rohn said, the more we learn, the more we earn. But I mean, it's true in a sense. It's not always about the money, but the more you learn about a thing, the more you say, okay, I can actually do this thing.
Right. Well, and I think so many people don't realize that former life, there were a lot of skills there. You were learning to be a leader. You were obviously learning discipline. I was working with a woman one time who was the stay-at-home mom. And then, wanted to get back out there. And so, her LinkedIn profile was like one line long, and I said, okay, now I happen to know her. And so that was, we were able to really work through this, but she had been the head of their PTA for years, which meant she did budgeting, she did fundraising, and I said, those are very transferable skills. A lot of people are very involved in their churches. I worked with a gentleman one time who he was trying for new managerial positions and was, struggling a bit. And one of the things he mentioned to me was, we're not supposed to put religion in, say, our LinkedIn profile. And I said, well, okay, tell me more about this. And he said, I'm a lay minister. He said, and I went, oh, and I said, okay, I don't want you to I said, yes, that needs to go in your profile. I said, because it shows you're a good public speaker. And as a manager, you're going to have to speak in front of people. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's 1,000, who knows what it is. But, and so he looked at that and he said, you're right. And he also worked on budgets through his church, all of those things. And so, it's really looking at, like you said, the TV shows, your friends, the young man that I'm working with, I told him, I said, who are you hanging out with? I don't remember who it is that said, we are the sum of the 5 people we spend the most time with. Exactly. So are they good people? And is, what are, and I told him, I said, if your friends on whatever social media platform, are talking about drinking, partying, whatever, even if you're not doing that, the assumption is you are.
Exactly.
And he said, no, he said, I don't have a Twitter account. He said, I don't do any of that. He said, our coaches never let us.
Wow.
And, and I mean, now you just basically, once they're, out of college, obviously it's very different, but you still see, how athletes and superstar musicians, wherever, celebrities, where they stumble on social media, and sometimes it's not even having anything to do with them.
Right.
But
it's different. I mean, again, it's a whole other day and age that we live in too. It's the pressure is different. It's internal, but we put the pressure on ourselves so often nowadays. Based off of what we think people expect of us.
Right.
Half the time they aren't really expecting much of it.
Sometimes they don't even know we're there.
To be honest.
Which is, I don't know if that's good or bad, but
right. I mean, but it's a different level of pressure because we have so many eyes, followers, friends, all these things. and it's like, man, we must do X, Y,
Mm-hmm.
Z
Right.
to appear, or we again, you mentioned hanging out with friends. We hang out online now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we hang out with people
Mm-hmm.
in groups online,
Mm-hmm.
or on different networks, and it's just such a different day that we live in. But it's even the same to where if you have a bunch of friends, your closest friends on a certain network,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody's holding up their middle finger,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and you're applying to
Mm-hmm.
work with me,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I
Right.
see.
Mm-hmm.
Nope.
Right.
I
Oh
mean, that's
yeah.
just, you get
Mm-hmm.
some things you happen to, not that you're guilty by
Mm-hmm.
association,
You kind
but
of are. Mm-hmm.
it makes me
Mm-hmm.
think twice now
Right.
because of your
Mm-hmm.
association.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, man, you seem like you got this going on, but I see all the pictures, and
Mm-hmm.
you're doing things that I'm
Mm-hmm.
not a fan of. So
Right.
yeah, it
Oh
makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah. When I work with people who are in the job market, I tell them your first interview is somebody Googling your name.
It really is,
And
man.
and what are they going to find? That's
It
the
really is.
and we all think, well, we're applying for a job, so they're going to look at our LinkedIn profile. They do, and so it needs to be obviously very good.
Mhm.
But what else are they going to find? And I'll be
Right.
honest, I Googled you
Okay.
just to see what was going to come up. And
Hopefully it was good.
it was. Now,
I'll take it.
obviously, you've done a lot, and so
Yeah.
you come up a lot. The
Mhm.
next person who came up a lot with the same name is a biblical scholar. So that's not
Right,
bad
right.
either. I mean,
Right, exactly, right, exactly. I'm
um,
very aware
yeah,
of Joel B. Green, if
yep,
I'm not
yep.
mistaken. Right, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that's why you have to use your middle initial too, right?
Right.
But yeah, I remember long ago, I was working with somebody, and he was really funny. He showed me a copy of his letter that he would send when he was applying for jobs.
Mhm.
Could you look this over? And it said, when you Google me, and I know you were, or you will, please know I am not the mass murderer.
Oh my goodness,
And
that's
I was
funny.
like, oh my God.
Oh
And so
man.
he just addressed that.
Right, right,
But
right.
yeah, that's not going to
I don't
happen
blame
too
him.
often.
Right.
um,
If I shared the same, I would probably put the same thing, and
Oh
that's pretty
yeah, oh
cool.
yeah, and but
Oh man.
yeah, I mean it's funny because we do look at that, but that is part
Mhm.
of this whole filtering concept is,
Absolutely.
that's out there. I
Hmm.
can't get rid of it. That guy's still a murderer.
Right,
But
right.
what can I do to make it better?
Hmm.
For you. And so, that's I think that's the thing is it comes back to what we were talking about at the start. So many people just give up. They're like,
Yeah.
no, it's just this has happened. There's a
Mhm.
pandemic. And nobody likes me. I'm not,
Mhm.
all of these things. And I think, it is because you were an elite athlete. That
Mhm.
is, that is part of that. I mean, there's always a chance there's going to be somebody better. Um, you
Yeah.
know,
Uh,
and so you have to continue pushing if you want to get ahead.
Absolutely.
I'm from Colorado, and so John Elway and Peyton Manning. I mean,
Right, right, right.
but yeah, I still remember when somebody asked me why did the Broncos and they were here in Atlanta, why on earth did the Broncos hire Peyton Manning? And I went, because he's Peyton Manning.
Right.
I
There's
mean,
no other
yeah.
explanation needed. Right.
Well, and you also knew what an inspirational player he was. I mean, that was just
Mhm.
kind of always the thing was, and I told this
He's
person,
a
you
leader.
understand that
Yeah.
Peyton
Mhm.
at 50% is better because at that point nobody knew what his neck injury was and all that.
Right, right.
And I said, you know, Peyton at 50 is better than most athletes at 100%
Agreed.
because of that motivation, that personal drive. He was and still is a good guy. I mean,
Right, right.
all of these various things. And so, yeah, I couldn't understand why they were thinking, why wouldn't you do this?
I mean, no, I mean, as soon as he went from the Colts, so I said, oh no, that was a good pickup. I
Mhm,
mean, the
mhm,
guy is a
right.
leader, period. I
Mhm,
mean, you
mhm,
don't have everybody that's
mhm,
in every position
right.
be a leader at
Mhm,
that position. They just may
yeah.
be good at it.
Yeah.
You need a leader if you want to
Mhm.
win. And I
Well,
mean,
and I still remember they were talking about the fact that, when he first moved to Denver, he actually lived at Dove Valley, which is the training facility, because
okay.
he didn't have an apartment yet. His kids were still in school in Indianapolis, and so they weren't moving, and all of these things. Because it was like, May, April somewhere when he moved
Right.
out there. And so he lived at Dove Valley. But he had told whoever, he said, I need a notebook with bios on every single person who works here from
Wow.
the janitor up, including their picture, including all that. He said, because they are all important.
It's
And he
amazing.
said, and I want to be able to call him my name and ask him how their kid's doing in school. And I mean,
Mm, I love
his
that.
leadership was just phenomenal.
Hmm. I mean, that's what it's about. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, those are the ones to where people are now comfortable being around you. It's that type of leadership to where even when you age out and you should be dropped,
Right.
it add on one more
Mm-hmm.
veteran year for you.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the small things
Mm-hmm.
that people lack in
Mm-hmm.
sports. That leadership, people lack in business. Is that leadership? It's just it's like if you just have that character of leadership,
Right.
people want to just help
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be around. They want to be a part of your
They want to
victory.
learn from you.
They want to learn. They want to
Mm-hmm.
learn from you. They want to follow you, and that's what it's really all about. You want to be that person in business, especially if you're a business owner,
Mm-hmm.
to where people can look to
Mm-hmm.
and rely on,
Right.
and know that no matter what, you are going to attempt to do things on the right
Mm-hmm.
way with
Mm-hmm.
integrity and unselfishly.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, oh my gosh, Joel, this is why I set the timer, because we could go on forever. And you've written your first book. And so I know that that means there's going to be more. So we will have you on again. And, really, I didn't get through any of my notes. I mean, we didn't talk about your daily schedule. I love that, your to-day list as opposed to a to-do list. So that just means people have to read the book to know what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But tell us how people connect with you and what are some of the things that you provide?
Well, you can connect with me. I'm pretty heavy on Instagram and Facebook more than any other. Instagram, you can find me at jgreenplt. That's Jay Green PLT.
Mm-hmm.
The same for the TikToks. I just got on TikTok finally. I feel like the whole world
I'm
has been trying to
old.
get me on.
No.
Yeah. Look, I refused for so long to get on TikTok until everybody's like, "Oh, you must do it." I said, "Okay." So I'm Jay Green PLT on there as well. I'm on Facebook, Joel Green. Joel Green Official on there, and my website joelbgreen.com, and I offer quite a few things as far as just our Nike camps that we have on the sports side of things. The majority of my time is spent towards speaking now, as Deb mentioned, professional speaking. And that's what I love to do, just to provide an impact to organizations and businesses and even universities and schools. So that's, you can reach me through my website, joelbgreen.com.
Perfect. I love it. And when you say PLT, that stands for pro level training.
Pro level training.
And so that's where that acronym comes from. I mean, this really has been fascinating. And like I said, we have to do it again because I just barely got through my notes.
Right.
And, and this is, to me, this is such a fascinating subject because it doesn't matter if you're 6, if you're 60, all of this applies, and whether you're starting a business, whether you are a business owner, whether you're just an employee, all of this pertains, because this is life skills, not just business skills.
Exactly. I mean, to a T. I mean, just can't put it any better. I mean, that's just really what it is. It comes down to life skills.
And as I said, I loved reading your book, which again is called Filtering the Way to Extract Strength from the Struggle. And so I do encourage folks to get it and read it because it's a great book. And clearly, you're a great motivational speaker. Do you have any final words that you want to leave us with?
Well, I mean, again, you can find my book on Amazon.com. It's also on Barnes & Noble, but a lot of people have been going to Amazon since we released it.
And we'll have the link in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you. Be sure to leave a review. I love to get feedback. I'm big on that. That's how I grow. I seek feedback. I'm very curious. But, beyond that, everybody just, don't lean away or run away from what you're going through. I mean, we go through life on a daily basis. It's a part of life to go through things that's unideal. Lean into them a little bit. Do the inverse of what your default thought tells you to do, your default feelings and emotions tell you to do. You have to put those things aside sometimes. Just really lean into what you're going through and figure out why it may have come. If you don't figure out why that pain has come, that pain may come again. So start to lean into life a little bit more, filter it, and really take from it all that it came with the intention to do.
I love it. Well, this really has been so much fun, and I can't wait to do it again. I'm Deb Creer. I've been talking with Joel Green, the CEO of Pro Level Training and the National Director of Nike Sports Camps and author and motivational speaker. Until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.